my name is FITRIAH bin TAJUDDIN. The COVID-19 pandemic was discovered in November 2019 and quickly spread to a number of countries, including Malaysia. On 24 January 2020, the virus was discovered in the country for the first time. As Malaysia prepares to enter the endemic phase, business have begun to regain momentum toward recovery after more than 2 years of mitigating multiple socio-economic challenges caused by the global health crisis. Some business choose unpaid leave or wage cuts when their operation could not continue as usual, resulting in a decrease in salaries and wages paid to employees. The minimum wage is a legal obligation that forces employers to pay at least the stipulated minimum wage to their employees. Prior to the health crisis from 2011 to 2019, main monthly salaries and wages received by full-time equivalent of paid employees in the public and private sectors increased at a 5.9% annual rate. The lowest increase was 1.0% in 2011, and the highest was 8.4% in 2014. However, for the first time since the series began in 2010, the average monthly salary and wages received fell in 2020. The average price fell by 8.1% to 2,747 ringgit in 2020 from 2,989 ringgit in 2019. During the same time period, median monthly salaries and wages fell by 13.3% to 1,894 ringgit. Despite the decrease in salaries and wages received, the number of recipients increased, albeit at a slower rate, at 0.2% in 2020 to 10.97 million ringgit. In March 2022, national inflation jumped by 2.2% to 125.6%, up from 122.9% the previous year. Nonetheless, the increase exceeded Malaysia's average inflation rate from 2011 to March 2022. That's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum and hi. My name is NADHIRAH binti AZMI. Today, I will discuss current challenges in Malaysia, specifically minimum salaries versus rising prices of goods. The first issue at hand is the issue of minimum wages. This is a significant issue for everyone, but especially for those who are married and have families. This is due to the fact that the expense of living continues to rise year after year. Because of the virus of COVID-19, many people are in despair as a result of this impact. For example, some of them are considering suicide since they are unable to support their families and themselves. However, on May 1, 2022, Datuk Seri M. Saravanan, the Minister of Human Resources, issued a directive raising the minimum salary from 1,200 ringgit to 1,500 ringgit. The increase in minimum wages, on the other hand, will be phased in. For the time being, only large corporations and urban areas such as Kuala Lumpur, Shah Alam, and a few other places are eligible. This is due to the higher expense of living in these places compared to rural areas. This hike in minimum wages, unfortunately, will not be fully implemented until year 2023. As a result, this news does not make anyone happy, particularly for the employers. This is because the government notifies people unexpectedly and when they are not prepared. Furthermore, this compensation hike will create a significant burden on the employers, particularly for the small business. This is because how are they going to pay their employees' salaries individually with a 10% pay increase? As previously stated, many firms pay Malaysian employees less than the minimum wage. Furthermore, it will be difficult for the new graduates to get work because the company would limit their employees in order to cut their labor costs. The rising cost of commodities is the second issue. The sharp increase in the price of commodities since last year has thrown the public into panic. Moreover, the price of these things will continue to rise by 40% to 60% this year. This has put a lot of strain on people, notably the poor, the B40 groups, and unemployed employees. Basic essentials such as rice, flour, and oil are examples. Meanwhile, the price of household equipment, raw materials, and housing has risen considerably. People often complain that the raw materials they purchase are inexpensive, yet the cost is nearly double what it was previously. As a result of this predicament, people are forced to design lower-cost food menus in order to continue their everyday lives. Finally, the issue of the minimum wages and the rise in the price of these commodities are intimately connected. This is due to the fact that if wages rise, so will the cost of products also increase. However, salary increases and the cost of goods are no longer in equilibrium. The rise in the minimum wages is mostly 10%, yet the cost of items increases by up to 60%. So, many people struggle to comprehend and accept this problem. People and the country will face much more hardships if the current inflation rate remains. As a consequence, the government must be concerned and not dismiss this issue in order to contain the problem and prevent future harm to the country. That's all from me. Thank you.
Next, I will continue on the affected aspect to minimum wage. Firstly, small medium-sized enterprises. According to the Malaysian Employers Federation, raising minimum wage to 1,500 ringgit per month before the end of the year will destroy the businesses that are still recovering from the economic impact of the COVID-19 outbreak and the disastrous impact on the recent big floods. The president of the Malaysian Employer Federation has released a statement of the new minimum wage will push the cost of goods and services. Operational costs will definitely increase, so this is not the right time. Most small and medium-sized firms were all struggling, and even a little cost increase such as this issue of raising the minimum wage may force them to close. Employers, particularly micro, small and medium companies who are affected by the COVID-19 epidemic, are likely to see a 25% increase in labor expenditure from 1,200 to 1,500 per month will put much pressure on their operating costs. When increasing expenses cannot be offset by higher revenue, market responses such as higher prices for goods and services and reduction in the numbers of workers are expected. As a result, many parties have agreed that from May 1, micro, small and medium will be exempt from paying the 105,000 minimum wage, and only larger businesses will be forced to pay the new minimum wage, which was told to Dewan Rakyat by Nur Omar, Entrepreneur Development and Cooperative Minister. Next, manufacturing. Following the government announcement of 300 ringgit increase in minimum wage rate to 1,500 ringgit per month from May 1, the Federation of Malaysian Manufacturers is terribly disappointed that its call for a gradual adjustment to the minimum wage under current business condition has been ignored. An immediate salary rise of 25%, which will have a knock-on effect on overall payroll costs and lead to a spiraling impact on business costs, thus derailing business and economic recovery. Given the current economic conditions, the majority of the respondents in the recent FMM Mere Business Conditions Survey 2H202 conducted from January 5 to February 10 believe that a 100 ringgit rise the minimum wage would be a reasonable rate in this review.
The FMM had proposed the government that the minimum wage rise be phased in, starting with 100 ringgit increase in the third quarters of 2022 and then a 500 ringgit increase in 2023 and 2024. Other cost factors that manufacturers had to deal with, according to the survey, included risk posed by the pandemic, which continued to impact global supply chains and logistical connectivity, raw material price increase and higher marine freight charges, increased commodity prices and increasing unemployment are all having an impact. In addition, the manufacturers are also facing higher electricity costs. As a reaction towards the implementation, FMM are urging the government to reconsider its intention to raise the minimum wage and instead adopt the gradual increment approach that they have proposed.
Other than that, the graduates also may affected on this implementation of minimum wages to 1,500 ringgit. It resulted in the decreased labour force participation among recent graduates, despite the fact that Malaysian PhD and master graduates should earn between 5,000 and 10,000 ringgit, while degree graduates should earn between 2,000 and 2,500 ringgit, and diploma graduates should earn between 1,000 to 1,500 ringgit. However, this new implementation causes issues, leading to graduate unemployment, because salaries earned prior to the implementation were higher than salaries earned after the implementation. Furthermore, because the minimum wage in Malaysia does not keep pace with the increase in the price of goods, fresh graduates may be affected. Because all goods have increased in price, graduates cannot survive on their monthly wages of 1,500 ringgit. As a result of this situation, some graduates have been forced to start their own business, but self-employment is often associated with informal employment, which brings not only low and unstable pay but also a lack of job security. Besides, the household may also affected on this implementation. According to Sheikh Hussein, President of Malaysian Employers Federation, an increase in the minimum wage will primarily benefit foreign workers, as local workers are already paid more than 1,500 ringgit. This also means that an employee earning significantly more than the minimum wage may experience no salary increases and become demotivated. This implementation has an impact on the household's ability to survive in life, particularly in this era of inflation, when most goods are sold at a higher price. The household must bear the high cost of living, particularly for those who live in cities such as Kuala Lumpur. Moreover, the businesses that cannot afford the high cost of raising the minimum wage will increase the price of their products to compensate. As a result, it will have a negative impact on the household as they have to bear the problem.
Hi, my name is Farahana Aida. Next, I will discuss further about how government can resolve the problems stated above. Despite unresolved concerns regarding the effect of minimum wage legislation, particularly in the COVID-19 pandemic, minimum wage policy and rising commodity prices are gaining appeal internationally and in key emerging nations. During this pandemic, every government has done all possible to ensure economic growth. In this part, we summarize that economic growth and productivity development are two elements of the economy's most serious challenges. Not surprisingly, these varied approaches reflect varying aims, priorities, and the implementation obstacles resulting in varying outcomes. According to the first issue mentioned, the government plays a particularly important role by emphasizing the pupils' cost of living. For instance, from the government standpoint, they can help people by boosting worker wages. The employer will fail to offer a livable wage for employers, and definitely if minimum salaries are set too low. If the government sets too high standard, it may result in reduced employment or widespread non-compliance. The difficulty thus is to determine minimum wages at a level that balances these concerns using a depoliticized method. Government also need to prioritize poverty reduction. The ability of minimum wage law to eliminate poverty will be determined by the household's characteristic of low-wage employees, which will necessitate rigorous valuation. Minimum wage poverty targeting is sometimes exceedingly imperfect, necessitating alternative or extra methods to fulfill poverty reduction goals. Besides rising the minimum wage, the government should modify the price of commodity to match people's earnings. This is because when these two things happen, people's purchasing power increases. People will have enough money to go shopping without having to worry about anything. When the cost of commodity exceeds the cost of wage, this situation becomes unjust. However, the effect on poverty reduction vary depending on whether persons affected by minimum wage legislation are poor or non-poor. For example, raising the minimum wage for teens will not relieve poverty if the majority of teenagers live in welfare homes. It will have an impact to our economy, which will slow down over time. It is evident what will happen if the government does not coordinate the prices and incomes, especially in the 21st century. People must battle to stay living. This also indicates that an employee whose present salaries are significantly higher than the minimum wage may face no salary increases and become demotivated if not avoided as soon as feasible. Price control is another method for the government to rectify flaws. Price controls such as a price cap and a price floor were included. As a result of the second difficulty mentioned, the government may set a price cap to address the fault. Price ceilings also refers to price maximum, which indicates that the government can legally establish a certain price that is below the equilibrium point in the supply and demand of consumer and provider. As a result, the vendor may not establish a price that exceeds the government's maximum. In this situation, the consumer is able to pay for purchases of products and services. On the other hand, the government should act in the economy in the proper manner, fix flaws with appropriate remedies, solve economic problems effectively, and manage finance rationally. Because Malaysia is a mixed economic system, the government must intervene professionally and treat it seriously, otherwise certain negative indicators may emerge, such as supplier and customer discontent, public demonstrations because the price of daily necessities rise unexpectedly, and so on. Finally, the government should think rationally and clearly before making decisions because its decisions affect the people. The government should also perform marketing research to determine whether or not consumers are pleased with the prices of products and services and whether or not suppliers establish appropriate prices in order to decrease market difficulties. When there are market access or shortage, the government may take appropriate measures to correct the problem.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Nina NASRIYAH binti Muhammad Noor from KBA2492B with the student ID 2022758535. As a conclusion, economic growth and productivity improvement are two of the economic most serious challenges. A minimum wage, according to the idea, would be tremendously helpful to many countries. Some research suggests that there are more than 60 possible elements that may improve our understanding of long-term economic performance. Malaysia's minimum wage law has led to a positive impact on employment but a negative impact on rising commodities prices. Increasing the minimum wage has an impact both on employment and commodity prices. The findings of this study shed light on these crucial problems by looking at the influence of Malaysia's minimum wage on rising commodity prices between 2017 until 2021. the National Wages Consultative Council (NWCC) is under more pressure to recognize and discuss the implementation issues faced through short and medium-term measures and government support. Employers have yet to see any win-win benefits from the minimum wage increase other than coping with the higher payroll costs. Companies need to embrace greater productivity as a tool of commercial adjustment if it is following the current growth in the price of commodities and the cost of living. This is because some cost-cutting and productivity-boosting tactics may include improving employee performance requirements, cross-training and multitasking, and extending work assignments. A large improvement in productivity is required to maintain higher salaries. It is recommended that the minimum wage rate can be redefined according to the cost of living of the entire state. This is consistent with the belief that a minimum wage increases people's confidence in entering the labor market. That's all from me. Thank you and Assalamualaikum.